Ezekiel chapter 8, Idolatry in the Temple. In the 6th year, in the 6th month, on the 5th day, while I was sitting in my house, and the elders of Judah were sitting before me, the hand of the sovereign Lord came on me there. I looked, and I saw a figure like that of a man. From what appeared to be his waist down, he was like fire, and from there up his appearance was as bright as glowing metal. He stretched out what looked like a hand and took me by the hair of my head. The Spirit lifted me up between earth and heaven, and to the visions of God he took me to Jerusalem, to the entrance of the north gate of the inner court, where the idol that provoked to jealousy stood. And there before me was the glory of God of Israel, as in the vision I had seen in the plain. Then he said to me, Son of man, look towards the north. So I looked, and in the entrance north of the gate of the altar I saw the idol of jealousy. And he said to me, Son of man, do you see what they are doing? The utterly detestable things the Israelites are doing here. Things that will drive me far from my sanctuary, but you will see things that are even more detestable. Then he brought me to the entrance of the court, and I looked, and I saw a hole in the wall. And he said, Son of man, now dig into the wall. So I dug into the wall and saw a doorway there. And he said to me, Go in and see the wicked and detestable things they are doing there. So I went in and I looked, and I saw portrayed all over the walls and all kinds of crawling things and unclean animals and all the idols of Israel. In front of them stood 70 elders of Israel, and Jazaniah, son of Shaphan, was standing among them. Each had a censer in his hand, and a fragrant cloud of incense was rising. And he said to me, Son of man, have you seen what the elders of Israel are doing in the darkness, each at the shrine of his own idol? They say, The Lord does not see us. The Lord has forsaken the land. Again he said, You will see them doing things that are even more detestable. And then he brought me to the entrance of the north gate of the house of the Lord, and I saw women sitting there, mourning the god Tammuz. And he said to me, Do you see this, son of man? You will see things that are even more detestable than this. And then he brought me into the inner court of the house of the Lord, and there at the entrance of the temple, between the portico and the altar, were about 25 men, with their backs towards the temple of the Lord and their faces towards the east. They were bowing down to the sun in the east. And he said to me, Have you seen this, son of man? Is it a trivial matter for the people of Judah to do detestable things they are doing here? Must they also fill the land with violence and continually arouse my anger? Look at them putting the branch to their nose. Therefore I will deal with them in anger, and I will not look on them with one pity or spare them. Although they shout in my ears, I will not listen. Judgment on the idolaters. Chapter 9. Then I heard him call out in a loud voice, Bring near those who are appointed to execute judgment on the city, each with a weapon in his hand. And I saw 6 men coming from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north, each with a deadly weapon in his hand. With them was a man clothed in linen who had a writing kit at his side. They came and stood beside the bronze altar. Now the glory of God of Israel went up from above the cherubim, where it had been, and moved to the threshold of the temple. Then the Lord called to the men clothed in linen, who had a writing kit at his side, and he said to them, Go throughout the city of Jerusalem, and put a mark on the forehead of those who grieve and lament over all the detestable things that are done in it. And as I listened, he said to the others, Follow him through the city and kill, without showing pity or compassion. Slaughter the old men, the young men and women, mothers and children, but do not touch anyone who has the mark. Begin at my sanctuary. So they begin with the old men who are in the front of the temple. Then he said to them, Defile the temple and fill the courts with the slain. Go. So they went out and began killing throughout the city, and while they were killing, I was left alone, and I fell face down, crying out, Alas, sovereign Lord, are you going to destroy the entire remnant of Israel in this outpouring of your wrath on Jerusalem? And he answered me, The sin of the people of Israel and Judah is exceedingly great. The land is full of bloodshed, and the city is full of injustice, and they say, The Lord has forsaken the land, the Lord does not see. So I will not look on them with pity or spare them, but I will bring down on their own heads what they have done. Then the men in the linen with the writing kit at his side brought back word saying, I have done as you commanded. Now remember, the Bible is prophetic and also never wavers. So what happens in the beginning, cause and effect, happens in the end, cause and effect. What idol had been allowed in the temple? This may have been the Asherah pole that was installed during the decadent days of King Manasseh. Any idol, whether in the temple or not, undermined the loyalty God's people were to have for the Lord and provoked God to righteous jealousy. What detestable things were done in the temple? They had placed pictures of crawling things and detestable animals on the temple walls, along with various idols. How repugnant to allow to the temple pictures of animals designated as unclean and off limits to God's people. Serpent deities associated with neighboring Egyptian, Canaanite, and Babylonian religions had corrupted the sanctuary of the Lord. Why were women mourning for Tammuz? Tammuz was the Hebrew name for the Sumerian Babylonian god of plant life. Every fall, when the crops died and the trees shed their leaves, women would ceremonially mourn his death. Every spring, when the plants began to sprout, they would celebrate his coming back. What does putting the branch to their nose mean? This obscure phrase is not found anywhere else in the Bible. It could perhaps be rendered as a stench to my nose, illustrating how offensive the people's idolatry was to God, or it may be part of a pagan ceremony involving the worship of nature. Wouldn't it have taken more than 6 men to execute judgment on the city? The language and description of these men suggested that they were actually angels rather than human men. Not only do people have guardian angels, but nations and the cities have them as well. These angels operate in spiritual realms with authority given to them by God. What was this, a vision of what would happen or a record of actual events? Both. Ezekiel foresaw that God was about to abandon Jerusalem and punish its sinful people. The temple would be defiled, men and women and children would be slaughtered, and the invading armies would unleash their fury. The people dismissed Ezekiel's vision, but his prophecy later became a record of actual events. Why did God's glory move to the threshold of the temple? Grieved and angry over the people's rejection, God fulfilled his promise to leave the temple if they turned away from him. But rather than leave instantly, the glory of the Lord departed in stages. The glory moved from above the cherubim in the Most High place to the threshold of the temple, from the threshold to above the cherubim of Ezekiel's vision, to the east gate of the temple, and to the Mount of Olives just outside of Jerusalem. Put a mark on the foreheads. God is not unfair. Each individual has held personal responsibility to him. Compare this with Revelation 7:3, another time when God is said to mark or seal those who belong to them. What was this mark? This mark refers to the final letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Ta, which is similar to an X. It distinguished the righteous remnant from the unrepentant Jews who would soon be captured and destroyed by the invading army. Why did God judge without showing pity or compassion? Mercy had earlier been offered, but now it was time for judgment, not mercy. In the Old Testament, total annihilation was the judgment imposed on those who were so rebellious that they would never repent. There could be no cure or reform for such people, only destruction. Why were they told to defile the temple? The glory of the Lord had departed the inner sanctum of the temple, making it spiritually empty. By profaning the temple, they signified its uselessness. The sanctuary was defiled by opening it up to Gentiles, other ceremonially unclean people and animals. And as we all know, God will not be mocked. And he's compassionate and loving, and he's patient. But there comes a time when there's one fist shaking in his face too many. And in the days that we're standing in now, we're very well aware